Now, time to move on. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. We haven't been able to kind of fit it in yet, but this week definitely wanted to get in here. This is going to be the most disappointing team in the last decades. So since 2010. All right, so the past 14 years ish or so, who is the most disappointing team? Chase, do you want to go ahead and go first here and give us your most disappointing team?
Yeah, so I have the last my most disappointed team in the last decade is the Las Vegas Raiders. At one point in time, the Oakland Raiders, right? So they've had, I just went back a couple, 10 years, looked at them, and then went back another 10 years. They've had 2 seasons of winning in the last 10 years. They've had zero playoff wins in that time, zero divisional titles. Even their the one year they went 12-4, they finished second in the AFC East to the Chiefs, right? They've had the worst draft in recent memory with drafting busts like Alex Leatherwood, Henry Ruggs, Damian Arnett, Cleveland Farrell, Jonathan Abrams, and Gerard Conley all in the first round, which are, they are all either out of the league or off of their team within their rookie deal. They traded away Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper in their prime, right? Khalil Mack then went on to win Defense Player of the Year in Chicago, and Amari Cooper is still balling for the Browns like we just seen this year, right? They brought in, so this year they thought they were doing great. They returned the leading rusher on a franchise tag. They brought in Devontae Adams last year, paid him like a top player. He's one of the highest paid players in the NFL, and then stripped off his QB and put him in QB purgatory. Within the last 10 years, they've had 6 head coaches, including this new one that they've just hired. And to go with that, they've only had 7 all-pro years, which 3 of those all-pro years have been special teamers, which is 2 punter years and a kicker. And then the other 3 are no longer on the team. So out of the last 10 years, they've had 6 of them that don't matter, 1 all-pro year that's still on the team, right? And that is Devontae Adams last year, right? And then to cap it all off, in the last 10 years, they were ranked dead last in fan attendance for 4 of the last 10 years. Right. So they're disappointing to their fans. They're disappointing in the draft. They're disappointing in win columns. They have just not been a good team. And I know there hasn't been a lot of hype around them, and maybe that's what makes them disappointing. But I'm just looking and like, you never expect, you don't have high expectations, and they still somehow fail to reach those.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, when you put it into perspective, they've just been one of the worst teams in the league. When you do that, so no, it's hard to argue against that. So my team that I want to say here is probably might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to talk you into it. And that is the San Francisco 49ers are the most disappointing team in the last decade. Let me convince you. Let me convince you. Let me go ahead and start you here, Chase. Well, let me ask you this question. One, how would you define success in the NFL?
Yeah. So
Winning Super Bowls.
yes.
Winning Super Bowls. What have the San Francisco 49ers not been able to do in the last decade? Win a Super Bowl. How many Super Bowls have they been to? 3. They've had 3 opportunities to win a Super Bowl in the last decade, more than half of the league, and they've lost all 3 of them. They've won since 2010. They had the 3rd most playoff wins at 13 with 0 Super Bowls to show for it. I saw this graphic and it was crazy. So this is playoff wins since 2018. The Chiefs and Patriots are tied with 16 wins, each have 3 Super Bowls. Then in third is 49ers with 13 playoff wins, 0 Super Bowls. The Green Bay Packers are next with 12 playoff wins, 1 Super Bowl. Seahawks, 10 playoff wins, 1 Super Bowl. Ravens, 9 playoff wins, 1 Super Bowl. Rams, 7 playoff wins, 1 Super Bowl. Broncos, 6 playoff wins, 1 Super Bowl. So the odd man out here is the 49ers without a Super Bowl. So they've been successful through the regular season. They've been successful in the playoffs. They made Super Bowls. They haven't been able to win it. So for me, I got to say that has to be the most disappointing thing because you've been there. You've been so good and dominant. You've been at the peak 3 times. There's literally teams that have not even been once. You've been 3 times in the past 10 years, and you have nothing to show for it, right? And when we just look here at what happened, so it starts. So 2010, they finished 6-10, and then that was the offseason where they hired Jim Harbaugh. Immediately, Jim Harbaugh turns them around. First in the division, go 13-3, and they go into the NFC Championship game, lose to the Giants. right? That in of itself is a success, right? You went from being very crappy for a long time, turning around, winning the division, boom, NFC Championship game. You can build off that. What do they do the next year? Finish first place and go to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, Harbaugh turned that around and turned around fast. They lose the Super Bowl to the Ravens, right? It's like, okay, made it there, you lost. Next year, right? Same thing. They lost the NFC Championship game against the Seahawks. Then 2014 through 2018, a huge dead spell, right, where they're finishing third or last place in their division. And then they obviously move off of Jim Harbaugh. And then Kyle Shanahan comes in. So 2019, they make it back to the Super Bowl. Dominant team, make it back to the Super Bowl, lose to Kansas City. Next year, Jimmy Garoppolo injury, they finish fourth place. The year after that, they make it back in the playoffs. They make it back to the NFC Championship game, lose to the Rams. The year after that, they make it back to the NFC Championship game, lose to the Eagles. The year after that, they make it to the Super Bowl, then lose to the Chiefs again. So different sides of the coin when we talk about like Cowboys and 49ers, where Cowboys are really, really good but choke in the playoffs. 49ers are really, really good. They just choke in the Super Bowl, right? Dominant in the playoffs. As we've seen, they have the third most playoff wins of the past decade, but 0 Super Bowls to show for it. So if I'm a fan of the 49ers and if I'm that close every single year, I'm like sniffing it every single year, and to walk away with nothing, to me, that is more of a disappointment than just not even being anywhere close to it, right? I mean, I'm in the kitchen smelling the cookies and everybody else is on the outside, looking through the window at the cookies, basically, right? Like you said, the Raiders, they're on the outside of the house. They're on the other side of the freaking parking lot, right? So obviously disappointment, but when you're there that close, you're looking at it, and then to have it snatched away from you time and time again after you think you're going to get it, wow, has to be disappointing. So for me, that is why the 49ers are the most disappointing team the past decade.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your reasoning and I followed it. I'm just thinking you're listing all of these things that the 49ers doing, and I'm thinking like if the Lions made it to a Super Bowl, it would be almost bigger than winning one for them, right? They haven't even got there. And the Niners have done it 3 times in the past 10 years. Like that if you want to talk about most heartbreaking losses, right? Because one of the big things is, the Niners don't have 2 Super Bowls because they ran into probably one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time in Pat Mahomes twice, right? It's not, then the Ravens game was a close back and forth ones, but I've just, that's a tough sell for me to say like just because they haven't won the success of winning it all, but they've eaten every other piece of cake that's there. Like winning the NFC alone, right? Not or AFC, whichever division I'm not, just getting to the Super Bowl is a big deal that I don't think, I think because you're in this successful area where Pat Mahomes is leading your Chiefs, right? You're expecting the Super Bowl, having the 49ers lose it to you or lose it in front of you has been on your mind. Like, man, that would suck if it was the other way around for you. But for teams that aren't expecting a Super Bowl, that would be, getting there would be fine.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, but are the 49ers not expecting a Super Bowl? They're the best team in the NFC. Should they not be winning Super Bowls every single year?
True, but what makes
Like no one's thinking the Raiders are going to win a Super Bowl. So yeah, it sucks and it's disappointing that they aren't doing anything, but they're not expected to, right? The 49ers are expected to. They have the most playoff wins in the NFC the past decade. And every other NFC, there's 4 other NFC teams that have Super Bowls over them. So I get what you're saying, but if Super Bowl is the bar, would you agree 49ers Super Bowl is the bar?
yes, they're
And
aiming
you're
for
not
Super
getting
Bowl.
it. You're not getting it. Nothing more disappointing than
Yeah, I got what you're saying. I mean, would you say the Cowboys they're aiming for the Super Bowl? You think the Super Bowl's the
that.
bar there, and they haven't even won a playoff game? Like,
I mean,
what
I
makes
would
that
be,
more disappointed than that?
I would be fine saying the Cowboys are disappointed. I'll be fine for that, but they haven't had the playoff success like the 49ers have. Like
That's true.
that's my thing is like, yes, the bar could be Super Bowl, but the playoff success is what drives it home for me with the 49ers, right? Like I said, there's only 2 more teams that have more playoff wins the past decade than the 49ers do. So the fact that they've been dominating in the playoffs is, Cowboys don't dominate in the playoffs, right? That's the whole
No.
thing, right?
Yes.
They never even made it to an NFC Championship game as long as I've been alive, right? And so the fact that the 49ers have been there and they're even actually not only just making the championship game, but actually going to the Super Bowl, right? They're winning their conference and still walking away with nothing. That's what's resonating with me. Like that's why I'm so focused in this is because the amount of playoff success that they've had with nothing to show for it.
Yeah, no, and I understand that completely. And I think I think you and me just have different versions of disappointing, right? Your disappointing is having it right in front of you but can't watch, right? Window shopping. My disappointing is, you're not even attempting to go shopping, right? You're stuck at your house because your car broke down and you can't get there.
Yeah, both valid. So anyway, let us know in the comments, you guys, who you think is the most disappointing team in the past decade. Let us know if it's the 49ers who agree with me, or if it's the Raiders who agree with Chase, or maybe it's another team. Maybe it is the Cowboys after being America's team and not having anything to show for it. So